I got bangs. Hi everyone, it's Reba. Welcome to my channel. Today I am doing the book recommendations tag and showing off my new haircut for the summer, which I got bangs. As you can see, I'm very happy with them. Yeah, I was bored with my hair. It's time to change. Anyway, now that we have addressed the bangs, let's get into the video. I was tagged by 3 lovely booktubers to do the book recommendations tag, which just goes to show if you procrastinate long enough, you'll get more peer pressure to do the tag. I was tagged by Kat from Kat's Field Notes, Dina Clarice, and Nathan from Nathan Snook. I'll link their videos below so you can go watch them. They had fantastic book recommendations, and I am happy to add mine to the list. Let's get into the tag questions. 1 is a book you tell people is your favorite. I chose We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson. I have probably recommended this book the most on this channel, and if I have to choose a favorite, I choose this book, I think every time. I love Shirley Jackson. This is my favorite of her books that I've read so far. It has a fantastic character, Mary Cat, wonderful gothic setting, and it is funny, disturbing, eerie, and just a fantastic book. I think it's perfect. So that would have to be my favorite. 2, a book that is your guilty pleasure. I don't feel guilty about these books at all, but I chose psychological thrillers as a genre in which I would say I read purely for fun or for just the plot. And typically, I think I'm reading more for introspection, character development, character study, and so there are times I'm in the mood for something that's just, I want to be whisked away in a plot or a mystery or something that's just like a rapid thriller. Some favorites I've read within psychological thrillers are Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn. I had so much fun with that one. I read it on audio when I was cleaning and preparing to move, and I got down to business and just couldn't stop listening to the audiobook. It was super fun. And then the other one I read recently was In the Woods by Tana French. I read this last year, and it was really fun. I said it felt almost like watching a BBC police procedural, psychological mystery, detective work. It was really fun. I really enjoyed it. But I didn't read it for the characters. I read it more for a plot and suspense. I enjoyed both of those books with no guilt whatsoever. 3 is a book everyone loved but you didn't. For this question, I chose a book which I was hyper aware of my dislike versus everyone else's love. I was reading it with a group of people that had very different taste than I did, and that book was The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. I read this for a virtual book club with a bunch of people I had never met before. I joined it when I first moved to San Francisco and thought maybe I would meet some people from book club. But at the time, people weren't meeting. We weren't meeting a lot in person. So this particular book club discussion happened over Zoom. And I joined. I had read the book. I showed up thinking, oh, I didn't really like this. This is going to be an interesting discussion. And the very first question that was posed to everybody in the group was, what did they think, and what rating out of 5 would they give the book? Almost everyone gave this book a 4 or a 5 out of 5. They loved it. They had a great time with it. And when it came to me, I was like, I didn't really like this book. I gave it probably 2.5 out of 5 because I only liked part of it. It was okay. I still had a great, interesting discussion, and I found another book club later on that suited me more. The book is about a girl that has a almost like immortality curse set upon her. So she lives throughout several centuries, and there's a love story within it. It's maybe kind of speculative, kind of fantasy, but it goes back and forth between different time periods, and I definitely preferred the more historic periods to the modern ones, and I just didn't care for it, and I thought the author lost a huge opportunity in exploring a lot of historical happenings by choosing to focus in on a modern relationship. So other people loved it. It worked really well for others, but I really didn't care for it, and it wasn't in my taste. 4. A book you read the fastest. For this question, I chose The Secret History by Donna Tartt, which seems crazy because it's such a chunky book, but I chose this because I think I read it very fast for how big and hefty this book is. I found this book very compulsive and hard to put down. I couldn't wait to get back to reading it, and I would recommend it for anyone trying to get out of a reading slump because I think it reads very fast-paced. There's a mystery element to it. The characters are quite intriguing, and it's just written in a way that I think demands a fast-paced read, and it was really, really fun. I enjoyed reading this a lot. 5. A book that deserves more hype. For this, I chose Agatha of Little Neon by Claire Luchette. I read this last year. I read this last year, and I loved it. I don't think it gets enough hype. I haven't heard anyone else talk about it, but I thought it was a lovely book. I believe it's a debut, and I thought it was fantastic. Great character. It's about Agatha, who joins the Sisterhood of the Catholic Church and ends up working as at a halfway house called Little Neon, and then she discovers a lot about herself and her own spirituality and her own relationship to the Catholic Church, which ultimately makes her decide to choose a different path in life. I think it's a great read. It's sweet and heartwarming. I think it's a great book for people who are in a period of discovery about themselves and who may be making a big life decision and who have come through a faith crisis and want to read about a similar story. So I think it's great, fantastic book, and excited to see what else comes from Claire Luchette. 6. A book that is becoming a movie or TV show. This is unconfirmed, but I had seen that Detransition Baby by Tori Peters was going to get a show adaptation. When I looked it up again, though, I haven't seen any more updates on this, on the progression of the TV show since 2021 when it was first announced. So I'm not sure if it's still in the works, but I hope so, because when I read this book, I thought this would be a fantastic TV show. The characters are so fun. It's so chaotic. It's really would be a fantastic show to watch and see it adapted. This book is about a trans woman named Reese and her ex-partner Ames, who has detransitioned and is now in a relationship with a cis woman. Her name is Katrina, and all three of them are trying to figure out a way to co-parent or be a part of Katrina's baby's life. Chaos obviously ensues. It's a riot of a read and super fun. So I do hope this does become a show. Let me know if you know more about this than I do, but I do remember seeing that Tori Peters was supposed to help screenwrite. So hopefully that's the case. Anyway, a great book nonetheless, really fun. 7. A book you have reread the most. I have 2 books that I reread quite frequently. We've Always Lived in the Castle, which I said was probably my favorite book, and I Capture the Castle by Dodie Smith. Both books with castle in the title, which is just a strange coincidence. Essentially, I've been alternating between rereading one of these every year for the past couple of years. Last year I reread We've Always Lived in the Castle, and this summer I just reread I Capture the Castle. These are like comfort reads to me. If I am in between books and want to read something that I am familiar with, I will read one of these. I'm going to talk more about I Capture the Castle in a later prompt, so I'll leave you with these. I recommend them both. Love them. 8. A book from a genre you don't typically read. For this, I chose You Made a Fool of Death with Your Beauty by Akwaeke Emezi. I just finished this one, and I would say this fits squarely in the romance genre, which I don't read hardly at all. I actually only picked this one up because I had really, really enjoyed Freshwater by Akwaeke Emezi, and they seem to write in so many different genres and have quite a broad range of topics and themes that they want to write about. So it's been fun to compare the two. Freshwater is still my favorite. I definitely preferred it to this one, but this was quite fun. I would say it's a romance because this story centers on the main character's like romantic relationships with different men and her decision making around those relationships. So not what I typically gravitate towards, but it was fun, and I think a really great summer read. Takes place mostly on an island. There's also themes of grief and art making in this book, so there's a little more to it than just a relationship storyline. 9. A book that deserves all the hype it gets. I had to choose a Toni Morrison for this, and I chose Beloved. I think Toni Morrison deserves all the hype and more, and Beloved was my first introduction to Toni Morrison, and I was absolutely blown away. You don't need me to tell you to read Toni Morrison, but here I am telling you to read Toni Morrison. She's incredible, and I absolutely loved Beloved. First book, but still my favorite. Still stands as my favorite of hers. This one is about a woman escaping slavery and the decisions she makes to keep her children from falling into slavery. And there is a gothic, haunting element, fantastic characters. This is the most rich, dense, beautiful, haunting writing you could read. Morrison is fantastic. 10. A book you usually recommend when asked to give a recommendation. I think this is the most difficult question of this entire tag because I don't like to give recommendations unless I have more specifics or I know what you like. It's really strange to me to just tell people to read something just because I like it. Doesn't mean you're going to like it. Typically, if someone's asking for a recommendation, I'll tell them what I've been reading recently that I've enjoyed, but I usually like to know what you've been reading and what you've liked recently. It helps me know, okay, then you might like this because I have more specifics. And sometimes we're just not ever gonna like the same books, and that's okay too. If you want a recommendation from me, I say just watch my videos. If you like how I'm speaking about the books and you have similar taste to me, likely you'll like the books I like. Otherwise, if you want a specific recommendation from me, just message me on Instagram or leave a comment below this video, because I really need more of a prompt or specifics to give a recommendation. 11. A book that has your favorite characters. One of my favorite characters of all time is Mary Cat in I Have Always Lived in the Castle, but I also recently read Milkman by Anna Burns, and I loved the character of Middle Sister in this book. So, I want to shout out this book again, even though I've been giving it a lot of praise this year. I think this character is fantastic. She's observant and witty and smart, and it's very interesting watching her navigate the different relationships and circumstances in this book. Her voice is unique, and not only has this Irish affectation, but also just a quite precocious and endearing personality. So she was fantastic to read, and I loved this book. 12. A book you wish you could live in. This is where I Capture the Castle comes back. I chose this book for a book I would love to live in because the family in this book lives in a castle ruin in England on this estate as it's transferring ownership to the younger generation. But ultimately, I've always found the idea of a modern family living in a historic castle very romantic and very idyllic. Yes. So this is one of the reasons why I always like rereading this, because I love the setting so much. I love the idea of this family who's at one point had money and then have no reliable income as the years go by. So they are just squatting essentially in this castle, and it has its quirks. They've had to it's not a reliable place to live. It's drafty and impractical, but there is something romantic and storybook like that has always intrigued me. And yeah, who wouldn't want to live in a castle, right? 13. A book you thought you would hate but ended up loving. For this question, I chose To the Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf. I never thought I would hate this book, but it was assigned reading in a college course I took, and I really struggled at first with it, not understanding, and then as soon as I got on board with the stream of consciousness rhythm that this book has, I just fell in love with it, and I really enjoyed it. I don't even think I really understood it all that much, but so it requires a reread from me, absolutely, but this book is the book that turned me on to Virginia Woolf. I've since read more Woolf because I really enjoyed To the Lighthouse, and yeah, I don't even think I can properly explain what this is about, but it's about a woman named Mrs. Ramsey and her family and this planned holiday at the lighthouse for the summer. And I do remember it being definitely stream of consciousness, character forward, and Wolf is excellent. So, yeah. 14. A book that made you cry. I cry a lot. Many books have made me cry. Movies, music. I am very emotional. But I chose for this prompt a book that I was really emotionally involved in, and that was Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. I also read this book last year, and I thought it was beautiful. It's a imagined story of Shakespeare's family, which we only know so little about, but the premise is Shakespeare and his wife's son's death, and so there is a theme of grief, especially of a parent's loss of a child, which is absolutely heartbreaking. I sobbed, and I felt so many things in this book, and I found it beautiful and a fantastic read, and I definitely recommend it. But yeah, Shakespeare, plague, death of a child, it's a lot, but definitely great if you like historical fiction. I thought it was fantastic, so yeah. And finally, 15. A book you wish you could read for the first time. I'm going to recommend Beloved by Toni Morrison again for this question. This one came to mind because I was blown away when I first read this. Again, this was my first Toni Morrison, and I had never read anything like it. And I remember the experience of reading this was just amazing, and I was so impressed and just like had not realized what literature could do until I'd read Beloved. So I think this really changed the landscape for me and the expectations I had for writing after reading Beloved. I wish I could read it again for this first time, but I am definitely going to read it again, do a reread of it, because I'd like to study it in a second read and also reread it in preparation for reading Jazz, which I do think is the follow-up to Beloved. So again, read Toni Morrison. That's the end of the tag. I had a great time doing this. Thank you again, Kat and Dina and Nathan. I'll tag some other booktubers below. But yeah, let me know if you want some specific recommendations. Otherwise, I will see you in my next video. And if you don't like my bangs, don't say anything because I really like them. Okay. Bye.